People, for example, talk casually about Allah or God and they say, He's like my best friend, He's my buddy, He gets me. But don't make up your own names for Allah. You can be friendly with Allah, but there are parameters. That's the point of revelation. But just about tasbih, the idea of tasbih, first of all, comes from sibaha or sabaha, which means one of the words in Arabic for swimming. And the difference between this word for swimming and other words for swimming, when somebody is swimming or floating and they don't dip in the water. You know how the swimmer can go under and then come up and under and then come up? But if there's a swimmer that's moving really fast, or you can think of like a jet ski or something, it's almost like it's hovering above the water. Right? That's actually the same word they use from the same origin of sabaha. They use it for a horse that seems like it's floating above the sand. Like it's moving so fast that it's almost hovering above the sand. So the idea of maintaining place, meaning staying above, but also staying above not because something is stationary, but something is in very rapid or very exhaustive motion. It's because of that motion that it stays in place. So I was talking about tasbih and the idea of maintaining motion. He told the Kaaba the dignity of a believer is more valued than the dignity of the Kaaba. And he swore by his own life when he said that, right? So now when you're slandering somebody or you're hearing somebody slandered in a gathering, you should realize that you've just not just done an offense against a person, you've done an offense against Allah. Which is why in Surah An-Nur, when slander is talked about, لَوْلَا إِذْ سَمِعْتُمُوهُ قُلْتُمْ, and immediately you should say, مَا يَكُونُ لَنَا أَن نَتَكَلَّمَ بِهَذَا. We shouldn't be talking about this. And then immediately the words are, سُبْحَانَكَ هَذَا بُهْتَانٌ عَظِيمٌ. You're way too perfect. That was something that was a treachery, that was an act of defiance against your perfection. This is a great, terrible accusation. So that's subhanaka there again. First and foremost, it's different from saying Allah is perfect. Now you're thinking about the descriptions of Allah. And so the first thing we're gonna appreciate here is don't make names up for Allah. Like if you're going to maintain the perfection of Allah's names, then don't make up your own names for Allah. In other words, people, for example, talk casually about Allah or God and they say, He's like my best friend, He's my buddy, He gets me. And people say things like that about Allah, casually. Like you and I, we just get it. You can be friendly with Allah, but there are parameters. That's the point of revelation. Revelation will teach you what are the intimate names you can use for Allah, what are the formal names you use for Allah. So even if you're going to feel something towards Allah, you cannot just talk about Him like you talk about any other relationship. There has to be a certain decorum you have to maintain. That's the first implication of Sabbih Isma Rabbikal A'la. You cannot assume that Allah's attributes work the same way as our behavior. For example, this is a very important one because a lot of times people come up and say, what have I ever done to deserve this? Why isn't Allah giving me, why isn't Allah being fair? I pray and I pray and I pray and I still keep failing my... It's not even fair. And so you're thinking that the relationship with Allah should work kind of like a business deal. I did my part, now it's time for you to do your part. That's how it should have worked. Like if you paid your fees, or if you paid, money to place an order, then you receive the product. Fair exchange. Now you're thinking that's how life should work. So it should work the same way with Allah. Well, that's short of tasbih of Allah. You do not assume the way things work with creation is the way things work with Allah Azza wa Jal. So this is the tasbih of the names of Allah. And that's a really careful thing a Muslim has to do. It's a mental exercise. You cannot just automatically have it. Which is why the word is tasbih. Remember, it's maintaining something, but it doesn't happen automatically. You got to swim really hard and really fast to stay on the surface, otherwise you'll dip. So the command, sabbih, is actually a mental exercise. Constantly maintain. Be mindful of the fact that whenever you hear something, be careful to think, are you actually falling short of what Allah wants you to think about for Himself? Are you saying something or hearing something that is short of the tasbih of Allah that would violate the tasbih of any of His names, any of His descriptions? Let me give you some names of Allah. Ghafur, Wadud, Wahhab, right, Kareem. These are names of generous, giving, merciful, forgiving, loving. These are one side of names. Another side of names is Aziz, Dhuntiqam, Jabbar, Qahhar, authority, overwhelming, dominating, capable of taking vengeance, powerful, mighty. these are kind of two different themes, aren't they? One's really soft and loving and intimate and hope-filled. The other one's kind of scary and authoritative. And what can happen, and when you don't have tasbih of Allah, is you take one set of these names, and your notion of Allah is now determined by one set of these names at the expense of the other set of these names. In other words, you're always thinking about how merciful Allah is, and how forgiving He is, and how kind He is, and how generous He is, and you've lost sight of the fact that Allah is also an authority, also a judge, also can take vengeance, also can punish, also brings to justice. That's gone. Or the flip side can happen. Those two also have to be kept in balance. And by the way, the only way to do that, brings me to the beauty of this. Sabbih isma rabbikal a'la, declare the perfection of the perfection of the description of your master, the most high description of your master, or your master most high. The al-a'la at the end could go towards the description that is most high, or the master that is most high, and both of them have implications. If the description is the most high, then you basically are saying, declare Allah's perfection by finding the most perfect possible description for Him. That would actually mean, like Ibn Ashur says, Quran itself. That would actually mean that this surah is saying, declare my perfection, and the best way to do that is this surah. And then by extension, this Quran. Because this is the most high way of declaring Allah's perfection. This is where the names of Allah will be balanced and nothing will fall short of where it shouldn't. You're not going to emphasize one side at the expense of another side. This is why it's going to be the ultimate dhikr. Some hints here and there that even though it's an early revelation, it's one of the earliest surahs revealed, it's actually also already starting to make a connection with the previous scriptures. With the Bible, the Old Testament, even the New Testament. Now what happened with the Old Testament, with the Jewish scriptures, was they actually stopped saying Allah's name. They say, He who shall not be named. I'm not talking about Lord of the Rings. They don't name God. And actually it's blasphemy to name Him. And Allah will say, declare the perfection of the name of your master. No, don't be in so much awe of Him that you can't even say His name. That is actually going to remove His consciousness from your hearts. Say His name, pronounce His name, declare His name. Which is why, by the way, the Prophet ﷺ, when he heard this ayah, you know what he said? اجعلوها في سجودكم. Put this in your sajdas. About this surah, he said, put this in your sajdas. And that's why when we go into sajda, what do we say? Subhana rabbiyal a'la. Right? The other ayah, فَسَبِّحْ بِسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. About that, the Prophet ﷺ said, اجعلوها في ركوعكم. Put it in your ruku'. And it's so beautiful, because it says Allah's name and Allah the most high, and we say that when we are the most low. Right? You're in the lowest possible position, sajda, and that's when you declare Allah is the most high. That's a very telling thing that we do, because the point of declaring Allah's perfection cannot happen until you declare how low you yourself are. You cannot feel yourself high and then do tasbih of Allah. Those two things cannot go. Every praise we do of Allah and every dhikr we do of Allah directly impacts our own personality and our perception of ourselves. That's actually what's supposed to be. That's why man arafa rabbahu arafa nafsahu. Whoever knows his Rabb knows himself. That's the mirror relationship that we have in the perfection of Allah.